Hello, everyone, and welcome. I was called to share yet another reflective video about what's happening in the present moment and, of course, the astrology of it, because it's, again, this, unfortunately, because no one wants it to be this way. However, the symbolic events are such a rich source of learning for astrology students because it's so obvious, like literally the main symbol of the planet that's playing out there in the world stage. And of course, the world stage, due to Saturn and Jupiter on 0 degrees of cardinals, is very, very active. So besides the scary part, it's really a good opportunity to learn, but even more an opportunity to really reflect upon the higher meaning of things. And that's the most important part, without a shadow of a doubt. So one of the energies that is really, really dominating the stage out there is, and I personally haven't spoken that much about it, is the square between Mars, very powerful, very comfortable in the sign of Leo, and of course Uranus, uh, making its way to that 29 degrees of Taurus. So that's a very, very strong, volatile, energetic, wild, uncontrollable energy. And there's also a strong side of truth to it. Truth in the sense that it raises awareness. It shows us that which we can't really deny or bypass or interpret too much. This is the it is what it is moment. So Uranus, amongst very many things, governs aviation. Anything that is in the sky and it flies and it travels and has an inner mechanism to it, like plane aviation. But then again, in its own way, in a different way, Jupiter is also a planet which has its own effects on long distance travel, aviation, connecting distant places, let's say it like that. Uranus may be the science and the mechanism behind the technology behind it, while Jupiter, the more elevated expression, coordination, legislation, the theory, all of that, which is not necessarily palpable. So why does this matter? Well, Uranus squared by Mars, Uranus squaring Mars, that adds energy. That means almost like when you light the fuse and it will get to explosion time. Time is up. The energy of it. When you plug something into the grid, well, it will the currents, the electric currents will flow through it immediately. That's how I see the Mars and Uranus square, besides the karmic nature of it and the personal element. It acts like the button which we push and things happen in so very many ways. But we must not forget Jupiter, the truth. Jupiter himself is squaring Saturn. Saturn with Neptune. Saturn conjoined Neptune. So this aspect also tells us we can't, as I said, pull wool over anyone's eyes. We can't wrap up things in a shiny exterior. We can't. Illusion doesn't really work because things are meant, that these are two very karmic planets. Things are meant to be out there and seen. So, aviation wise, you can imagine that this energy tells us the disaster, the crisis, the explosion, the horror, scariness and tragedy of it. That's one thing. The other thing is, it also tells us that the aviation industry is full of flaws, full of errors, full of Uranus in the sign of Taurus, improvisations to save resources, money, make the budget feel, and may this be done on airport level, company level, factory level, whatever level. Well, this is one of its consequences. When you save money, when you try to make something economically, the figures, the numbers efficient, and try to manage it that way, and you cut health and safety stuff from the design itself, Uranus, it will lead to this. On the other hand, Neptune squaring Jupiter. Uh, how many flights did all of us take in the illusion that we were safe? However, how much of that illusion, that feeling, that frequency actually made it safe? So, how much creational power our subjective feelings actually have? How well can they actually trigger or not block out fate, right? Under certain aspects, what we believe and how we feel don't matter, right? Exactly under this aspect. What we feel, our state, our frequency, sometimes it doesn't matter. In rare moments like this, and we see when that is cancelled, when that is powered off, then reality, objective reality hits hard. So this is like, this mirror is showing us more than one thing. It shows us that we can't save, cut corners when it comes to health and safety. On the other hand, how much of health and safety is provided by inner forces, by our sheer belief, by our sheer want, which a course of events our soul accepts, and which it's impossible, regardless of what physical reality might bring to the table, because the flaws in the aircraft design were there all along, right? And that flight had numerous journeys and voyages totally safe. So, how much the inner state many times matters, and how predominant it is many times to what physical reality and actual science would say in that matter. So we see here the physics of consciousness and the nature of reality itself. And of course, the astrology, aviation, Mars, Uranus square, always some kind of accident, some kind of the inevitable finally comes. Or that which is dangerous together fuses. It something happens. It will not stay passive forever. Like two deadly neighbors, and we can see this play out also. This is the other effect on the world stage, where two very unfriendly neighbors just started a conflict that will without a doubt have strong ramifications. And we can also see the astrology of it. Saturn in the sign of Aries, well, the head of Aries, the head, Saturn the ruler, head of Iranian military, physics department, science, well, the heads overnight were, eliminated. We can see this Jupiter and Saturn square play out very, very strongly. But then again, also the Uranus and Mars square, where if a conflict is not directly addressed, it is just kept in the background, and addressed in all only in alternative ways, well, it's not gonna work for long or forever. A moment will come when such things happen, so of course, and this will without a doubt lead to very strong Uranus in the sign of Taurus economic repercussions, economic destabilization, uh, change of the dynamics of alliances. This is shown by the fact that Jupiter squares Saturn and Neptune. Jupiter is, especially in the sign of Cancer, who is beneficial to us. And this is very easy to determine in the life of an individual, a person, an entity. That is why it's the same with a nation, with a country, with a different type of entity. So exactly the relations, Cancer and Gemini. Well, Jupiter at the 0 degree of Cancer is, you know, is still connected to that 29 degree of Gemini, neighbors. So what happens with neighbors? Who belongs, who should belong in our life, and for which relations the time is here. Like one of the effects of Saturn and Jupiter square, the time is up, time is here. It cannot go any further than this, or it cannot be delayed any further than this. So this energy is affecting everyone really, not just countries and collectively out there, but also us individually. Where in our lives do we have timings where we say this can go no further? Inner timings where a need of ours, a want, a desire, something that's very, very important for us, something inside of us shifts, and we feel that the time is now to make a move, to make a step, to make important maybe preparations and decisions, or to abandon would the square show us the impossibility of what we want. So this is a strong reality check moment for everyone. And also the most important fact, what do these external collective scary energies reflect to us personally, because all of what is going on exteriorly also takes place within our being. So, on one hand, our inner leadership also has to change. Because, as I said so very many times in so very many different contexts, and it fits this one as well, we live in a different paradigm. Reality, including our very subjective, intimate, personal reality, has different rules now, different ways, different mechanics. We need to learn those and adapt ourselves to them. So the way we steer our beings, what is important to us, who we are to ourselves, our dignity, honor, what that means to us, sovereignty, uh, basically anything that is self-centered, that is under the microscope. That is under a strong revision. What we permit, who we permit to, that is changing, that is being rearranged. So big things are happening in the lives of individuals as well. Within families, Cancer, relationships, jobs, careers. People are preparing to make big moves where, as I said earlier, everyone realizes that a new inner leadership is needed. For example, where the mind, where in the world that it was pre-2020, let's say, it genuinely needed to be at the buttons, it needed to be the president, the king, call it however you want, the high priest of our being, because it was the valid tool to navigate. Now, on the other hand, we need a counsel. We need the mind to respect the heart, the emotional world, even the unconscious, and even, well, of course, the inner animal, as Freud would name it, the id. Every part of our beings needs specifics. Balance matters now. It's not just what the mind thinks, it's not just what sounds right, it's not just the plan, the logic, the how the greater good looks like on paper. No, no. This is where we are no longer a citizen. We are a multidimensional being, and life needs to be lived in that way. So it's not as easy as it was. And that's why the present moment Jupiter Saturn square is really challenging our inner leadership. Who am I to myself? What do I believe in? What do I believe about my own limitations? And this both in any way, not just in a negative way. For some people, it's definitely not about breaking limits. It's actually the opposite. Setting boundaries, walls, limitations, containment, confinement to the self, taming the wilderness of the self. So limits are golden, are the value in those individuals' lives. For example, this is where I won't let my, I don't know, insecurities, needs, addictions, vanity, pure ego, paranoia, fears run my life anymore. I'll let my aspirations, principles, what I really love run life. For this is just an example here. Um, Another expression of this energy is exactly the beliefs. Which beliefs are the, symbolically speaking, devil in our lives, the hidden enemy, where in this new paradigm, clinging to those beliefs is self-limiting and futile. It makes many things in our lives obsolete. So what beliefs we need to let go, especially beliefs which, as I said earlier, maybe they were a valid truth, grounding truth in our lives pre a few years ago. I don't necessarily want to insist on the 2020. Um, but now maybe those beliefs are, well, cancer's dark side. You know, the pincer, it doesn't let go. We're not moving anywhere. We cannot move. We cannot advance because some beliefs are really keeping us in place. And may these be like beliefs very subjectively, how we interpret reality, the meaning we give to reality in any way, shape, and form. May those be religious, may those be deeply spiritual, psychological, or love, or whatever. We need to break certain beliefs and at the same time embrace others in whatever that means for your own balance and well-being. And the other thing is, well, all this conflictual energy. This conflict is also within us because the world as it had to run, perhaps, pre 2020, or from 2000 to 2020, let's just say that, the Taurus cycle. Well, it kind of conditioned us, it programmed us. How should I even word this in a more correct way? Well, it trained us forcefully, basically, to be in a certain way too cautious, way too wary, way too judgmental. with everything and everyone in our lives, including the self. The world needed that. That was a powerful requirement to be successful in the old paradigm. Now, however, we really need to start changing our even our core instincts, how we respond to reality, because we need to start trusting each other once again, but in a realistic way. We cannot trust that which deems itself totally not worthy of trust. And what is not worthy of trust is fighting. It is showing itself. So we know which element in our lives we cannot trust and should not trust, where our own inner truth, even if that is flawed and faulty, is still better, more superior than that. And let's just name it here: the social, political, governmental, that which runs the collective. Not the collective itself, rather it's that function is definitely not worthy of trust, because it is possessed with the intent to, well, destroy, dominate, use any fancy words here, and you can. So, however, this energy also invites us to seek where we can find trust in the self, in the divine within the self, within brothers, sisters, community, people like us. What the heart tells us that we can trust, etc., etc. And again, for us to solve our own inner conflicts, for us to start forgiving life, start forgiving the past, stop diminishing the ego, where certain things in life which traumatized us and caused us to be the sorrowful victim. For example, the career that didn't work out, the family that let us down, the community that, of course, the Jupiter and Saturn square, that is a truth. That is history. That will find no justification. Of course, it was bad. Of course, it was sad. Of course, it was what it was. However, if we continue to give that this much power to really dominate us and take away the joy of our life for something that just happened there and then. We can't change it. It changed us permanently. Yes, that's a fact. But we can give a different meaning to our life where that actually can be beautified. That can have a sacred meaning. That can be like a sacred scar and wound that makes us stronger. So this is what we need to do to stop our inner conflicts. Start forgiving life, start forgiving people, start forgiving the self for decisions, choices, start forgiving exes, start forgiving parents, teachers, society, bullies, whatever we need to forgive, we kind of need to start doing it. And the pain of the past not to matter anymore. Because if it matters, we see this play out on the world stage. If it drives us into aggressive paranoia, not to repeat the pain of the past, but that makes us not rise above victimhood, but actually embrace victimhood for eternity. Force the divine part of the self to embrace victim, to become a divine victim. No one wants that. So that's why we, individually speaking, we need to stop giving the victim the pedestal, the importance, the spotlight, the trophies, the compensation, the food, right? And we need to start feeding the survivor, that part of the self which believes, which wants, which sees the greater good, which loves life, which wants to live life in a at least have decent collective and collective reality. Fights, conflicts, wars will never stop, but there's war, like just war, the expression of Mars, and there is something which is infinitely deceptive and is like a meat grinder or soul grinder or any grinder. There's one and the other. One is supported by cosmic forces. Let me give you examples. Baal, any god of war that you want, that's usually seen as a negative influence that you want to include here, that it's part of nature, right? And the laws of survival and superiority and nature's evolutions of war is not going anywhere. But there is when war is not really war anymore. When war is just named war, but even the demon of war is insulted by it, right? Because war needs the experience to feel like a competition, to have immersion, to have pathos, passion. When a robot just kills, well, that's where even as I said, the demonic expression of war turns its head because there's no experience here. There's no food for the cosmos in that. It is almost like we made reality to just be a computer. We delete which we do not like. We can't really do that because we're not on that godly level yet. So, of course, we need to reflect on all of this in order to diminish it, expressing itself collectively before things happen. And the other thing that I want to mention, the recent mind-blowing, literally mind-blowing cosmological discoveries of the James Webb Space Telescope. Are we truly alone? And I don't mean extraterrestrials here. I mean as in universe. We just saw the bubble universe. You know, that which is our direct neighbor. That changes anything. There's no Big Bang anymore. It doesn't work. So, why does this matter? Well, we do need to step up our game if we have the knowledge and the scientific evidence here, then our morality needs to kind of reflect the level of maturity and power of knowledge. Because if it doesn't, well, the cosmos will definitely rebalance things for us. And perhaps not a nice way. And this is where gross ignorance, and not as a citizen, I'm not talking about that which you might hear on social media and uh, everywhere, that ignorance is complicity and everyone has blood. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about if we are aware of the physics of consciousness, if we know how reality works, how fate works, how the cosmos works, and we cannot deny that knowledge, regardless of how we figured it out, through ancient wisdom, religion, yoga, science, philosophy, you being hit on the head at a certain age and that caused I don't know what kind of epiphanies, being friends I wanted to say a not so nice term here, but I'll rephrase. Lovers or any quality with I don't know what kind of guru or YouTube or social media or what, it doesn't really matter. Where you got your awareness from, how the physics of consciousness works, it doesn't even matter which way you, what method, system, symbolism, books, whatever, authors you are using to interpret it for yourself, as long as you have inner standing, so you kind of know how it works, and choose to ignore it in that, so in the ether. We're not speaking about the citizen's role and all that gaslighting. No, 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 no. We're speaking about the ether, what I want to believe. What I, as a building block of everything, as any other soul, uh, have my word to say. What I want to be and what I don't want to be. What I want to send into the light, in the sense that it can be created, and what I want to send into the abyss, into the total forgetfulness and unconscious of the universe. So I'm speaking about that. So we really, really need to make our positions very clear to the divine at this moment, what we agree with, what we do not agree with, exactly in spirit. Not the nitty-gritty detail, but in spirit. So thank you so much for listening, and so sorry to spam you with these updates. So until next time, bye for now.